Standby 1010, investigator reported disturbance at Acer Plaza.
10-4 dispatcher, verify address.
It's Acer Plaza, repeat, Acer Plaza.
Shots fired on the rooftop. An assault in progress at Acer Plaza.
I recently played Max Payne, a third-person shooter developed by Remedy Games and released in 2001, a nearly 20-year-old title. After never having played it previously, I wanted to see if the game could hold up in a world after the slew of stellar third-person games like Uncharted, the Resident Evil series, Gears of War, and countless others. Going into the game, I had a general idea of the setting and gameplay mechanics, but I had never actually watched or played any of the game.
See, officer in danger, Acer Plaza, repeat, Acer Plaza, all units.
They were all dead. The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger, and then it was over.
I have played other third-person games this year, like the Uncharted series, The Last of Us Part 2, and Control, prior to Max Payne. I'm here to tell you, however, that not only does the game hold up, but it shows that time and time again Remedy is one of the most consistent development studios, and that numerous games over the last 2 decades have been heavily inspired by Max Payne.
To make any kind of sense of it, I need to go back 3 years. Back to the night the pain started.
The story begins 3 years prior to the main events of the game, with New York City detective Max Payne arriving at home, finding junkie mobsters inside, who have just murdered his wife and child. Max is a man who had the perfect life and tragically loses everything he loved. The story is told through dialogue, environment, and comic-style panel scenes with voiceovers. These comic scenes are great, and voice actors do a phenomenal job of bringing the characters to life. Max is a distinct person with a distinct voice, even if his character model doesn't quite hold up. The gameplay in Max Payne consists of third-person shooting action with the ability to slow time either while standing still, running, or with dodge leaps, which can be performed in any direction with the tap of a button. There are some minor platforming and exploration sections, but these take a backseat to the story and gameplay. Other than obtaining new weapons as you play through the game, there is no more growth or upgrades to mechanics or gameplay. The only growth is the player's skills and their ability to use these mechanics in the appropriate manner befitting the scenario that Max is in. Starting with the visuals, the environment art is definitely dated but not ugly, all of which is in a dark, gritty, snow-covered New York City. There are subways, bars, apartments, clubs, streets, and back alleys, each of which are easily differentiated from one another. And I honestly enjoyed the look of the levels and environments, which have a sort of timeless quality. The character models and faces are, to be frank, rough, but it was the best they could do at the time. In fact, one of the first scenes of the game shows Max taking his Beretta out of his jacket, not rotating the gun to match his hand, which is pretty great. Some of the faces and animations are hilarious to watch in 2020, really showcasing how far video games have come in the last 20 years. Although some of the animations like shooting, reloading, and dodging all look really fantastic for the time, many others like walking, which makes Max look like he crapped his pants, jumping, and cutscenes are obviously dated. Playing through it for the first time, I definitely got a kick out of seeing some of the faces and character models introduced with such confidence, especially when immediately noticing Max Payne is literally the lead writer Sam Lake, who's pretty well known at this point. The third point of interest for visuals is the comics, which look great and were a superb choice in use over cinematics, which are used sparsely throughout the game.
I came in from the cold and the dark. Outside the city was a cruel monster.
The level design holds up amazingly well, guiding the player with lighting, colors, and other environmental clues. Oftentimes, little quips from Max or the enemy dialogue will also help point the player in the right direction. The game uses hallways with sharp corners to jump around, and larger areas that the player can zigzag through, dodging enemy fire and using cover to advance. There is a ton of verticality, and a lot of fighting on staircases or steps, usually with Max below the enemy. The player often finds themselves fighting upward, meeting resistance from enemies above that encourage the player to keep pushing forward. Remedy managed to make their levels feel as though they could be authentic, and because each level is only a small chunk of the game, they never drag on too long or become too repetitive. While overall, the level design is way ahead of its time, it sometimes feels worse because of enemy placement and encounters. The game will lull you into a false sense of security, making the player feel as if there is some time before the next encounter, when bam, Max turns a corner and is one-shotted in the face by a shotgun, and 20 minutes of game time is lost because you forgot to press the F5 key. Whoa, who is shooting me? Enemy placement sometimes feels cheap, and like some of the traps in Dark Souls, where all you can think is, how the hell was that my fault? There is no way you can possibly predict or anticipate getting shot by these enemies hiding in a corner. You have to play the game more cautiously because of this, which is a detriment to how great the gameplay is and how the devs intended the game to be played more fast-paced. Shooting enemies feels tight and responsive. And there are times where I swear using a mouse and keyboard had the rumble of a controller in hand. The animations of weapons can really be seen when slowed down to accentuate how good the weapon recoil and firing is. Max's movement, the gunshot's impact, both in the environment and on the enemies, all tie it together, bringing it far above third-person shooters at the time. Dodging and bullet time make you feel like a badass, and being able to push forward into groups of enemies as they rain fire and grenades on Max is a delight. Flying around corners and sprinting towards enemies in slow-mo while dual-wielding Ingrams is fun the entire way through. Who said Doom invented push-forward combat? Dodging in slow motion is a strange dodge that's very low to the ground, which Max Payne 2 later fixes with its big leaps. It still feels great to fire off around a corner and litter unsuspecting enemies with lead, but if they are behind a half wall, your shots don't make it over, and this happens quite a bit. Slow motion is generated when killing enemies, so the more you kill, the more it recharges, which sometimes makes tougher engagements a slog if you are low on bullet time. Bosses, which don't stand out too much compared to other enemies, just have a crazy amount of health, so shooting them is a little less impactful than others. What is she wearing, a bulletproof blouse? What the hell is that? Which brings me to difficulty. I have been playing video games for 27 years, and this game, even on the easiest difficulty for a first playthrough, is outrageously hard. It spikes in difficulty in a few areas because of enemy placement, their ability to laser Max's dick off at a second notice, and what seems like a constant scramble to find painkillers like you are a legitimate addict. Their reaction time is unreal. 1 second you are in the zone carving a path through a room, and the next an enemy has instantly killed Max. These difficulty spikes are further aggravating because the save system is a pain in the grundle. There are no quick saves while within levels, so if you don't remember to save the game, you're going to be replaying entire areas repeatedly, especially when the difficulty shoots up. On the other end of the spectrum, save in the wrong place, and you'll have to reload a different save or get endlessly rocketed into the afterlife. Towards the end of the game, enemies are straight up savages that will shoot the tip of Max's elbow if it sticks out too far. Holy shit, man. Pressing F5 is not that hard to do to save, but remembering to do this while in the flow of combat, keeping an eye on your health, and navigating the environment when you are in the zone is a lot harder than you would think. No health left, but... Oh... Combine all of this with a lack of painkillers, making caution even more prominent when low on health, knowing that some dickhead with Chris Kyle's aim and John Wick's reflexes can be around any corner. Where? Oh no, and I didn't save! The hallucinogenic and dream sequences are well done, showing Max's worst nightmares, with the exception of the dark walk on a red line, or whatever you want to call it. Here you can slip and fall off like you are standing on a 4-inch circumference pipe, and jumping became bugged for me to the point where I couldn't make it across gaps anymore. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, when shortly after I realized there wasn't anything I was doing wrong, it was just bugged. Little bugs like this and getting stuck to walls in the dreams were frustrating, but did not ruin the overall experience I had with the game. Jumping was also a little iffy at times because of wall and box heights, making it unclear if Max could actually make the jumps you were attempting, and sometimes slipping off of edges if not quite there. The game boasts a fitting soundtrack, bringing the action to focus and ramping up when necessary. Gun sounds are a bit weak and don't really stand up to most shooters, which can be bolstered when the recoil and weapon spray can miss shots, making weapons feel like pea shooters at times.
Get out of here! Oh my gosh, they hit me with a bomb!
The shotgun sounds beefy enough, but is quite literally hit or miss. It is like shooting a mobster with a bus or a BB gun, no in between. Overall though, the sound is not a detriment to the game, and honestly, I didn't notice anything bad, so I don't have much else to say about it. If you have never played Max Payne, I definitely recommend giving it a go. Even if it seems like I have a lot of complaints here, overall, it is a spectacularly fun experience that is just the right length with well-crafted player mechanics and level design, minor frustrations with saving, enemy placements and difficulty, and some janky jumping. I only critique out of love. The game brings enough challenge and exploration that will warrant multiple playthroughs, while also keeping the player engaged with its extremely fun gameplay and well voice-acted story. Playing through this now, you can clearly see where game studios like Naughty Dog with the Uncharted series and numerous other third-person shooters were influenced heavily by this game. Max Payne absolutely holds up in 2020, and I enjoyed being able to experience this game for the first time even after the incredible quality of modern action games. I really wish more game developers going forward would take a page out of Remedy's book, a straight up fun, engaging, and well-designed linear experience with a 6 to 8 hour playtime instead of another open world game padded with filler content to brag about its length. Max Payne was revolutionary at its time, and although it is not perfect, Remedy accomplished something truly brilliant with Max Payne, an inner world before Resident Evil 4. They should be commended for making such an exemplary title, and easily one of the best in the era of its release. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to let me know, subscribe and like the video, and be sure to check out my Twitch channel linked below, where I will be playing video games and discussing them at length like this, while also joking around and having a really fun time.
That didn't go as planned at all!